Screen.
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. So, like she said, we'll be talking about taking products from concept to market and making sure that they're successful. We're in a market that you can call small. The African market, for some products, the market is small. For some products, the market is large. But what we can't deny is that it's a competitive market. So I hope that I'm able to share some knowledge that I have to help anyone who is a PM, a PMM, or a salesperson, or anyone interested in products in general, to gain some insight into how you can, work with a team, how you can move a product from being just an idea to being successful in the market. Some things that you can do to help your team succeed, and some things that you can bake into the team to make sure that you're set up for that kind of success. So for tonight, we are going to be learning how we can build more effectively, some principles that set our teams up to build the best products, how we can create a winning GTM strategy, just some building blocks into taking a product to market, looking at what GTM strategies actually are, and how they differ from what most of us get to see when a business launches a product. We're also going to look at the two C's, which are clarity and collaboration, how we can communicate effectively with various teams within a company to launch a product. Um, we're also going to look at building product and revenue sense, knowing that, whatever you build outside of the product being functional, outside of the product working the way that it's intended to, you also have to think about how the product is priced and think about the product making some revenue, fulfilling some revenue metrics, how to make sure that you can do that. And every product manager just having a sense of what's involved, the money side of things, beyond product development and management. We're also going to talk about agency, which is, having the mindset to take ownership and, in quotes, not necessarily call the shots, but take that small section that is yours in the ladder and truly own that, and how to also get top management to buy in on some decisions that you're looking at making and understanding considerations that you have previously made. So um, a UTM strategy is basically an outline of considerations and well-researched steps that are required to take a product or a feature or a new business to market. So depending on the kind of business that you trying to take to market or the kind of company that you work at. For today's case, we're going to be making the assumption that, we're talking about a tech-enabled business, a product-led startup, or a product-led business. This is going to be an example of how to, work through getting a product in a tech-enabled business to market. So a GTM strategy should ideally begin at idea stage. So if you look at the last point here, it says that GTM strategy is not GTM motion, and that's something that is confused sometimes. Many people think that go to market, because it has the word market, necessarily means that it has to do with marketing the product, putting it out there, maybe the videos, the announcement articles, and maybe the wait lists that you see. All of those things are part of the GTM motion. So that's the tail end and the publicly observed part of a GTM strategy. All the other parts of a GTM strategy that you cannot see, that you cannot publicly observe, those are the things that make up a GTM strategy. But the tail end of it, where you have launch materials coming out, you have videos, you have something gamified for people to try, all of those things are the parts of the GTM strategy that you can see. So those are usually they're called a GTM motion. So a GTM strategy should be collaborative. It should encompass standards that are laid down by product and GTM leadership. So if you work in a company that has a defined product team or a defined go-to-market team, there are some standards that you have to lay down. What does our GTM strategy look like? And how do we even create one from scratch? Sometimes businesses start out saying, okay, I just want to build a product, put it on social media, see how it does, get people to start paying, get people to start giving us feedback. And most times that happens in, cases where the business is very early stage. You haven't really thought carefully about what your GTM strategy looks like. So that's pretty common. And hopefully by the end of today, we'll know how to get through that. And the last thing is that a GTM strategy provides clarity. So it enables anybody who steps into that process to understand what is required to take that product to market. So say you hire a new product marketing manager and they are tagged on the same product as you to take that product to market. If the company or the team has a defined GTM strategy, it makes it really easy for anyone to step into that process and understand what is required of them and how to move that product forward. So in general, depending on the kind of company that you work at, for the case of our assumption, which is a tech-enabled business, there are three major parts of a GTM strategy. So you have the pre-development part, the post-development part, and pre-launch. So pre-development is all of the idea stage things that go into validating the fact that we need to build this product and also allowing us set up some of the operational parts of the product before we move into engineering and all of that and design and so on. So in pre-development, you will have product and feature ideation. So here you're expected to, as the PM, as the product manager, or the product operations person, depending on what gives where you work, you're expected to, the idea here would be to create what you expect this product to do, the pain points you expect it to address. You're also expected here in the ideation part to tell other members of your GTM team why you're choosing to build the product. Are you building it because it's now competitive to build the product? Are you building it because from your market research, you've seen that in the next 1 year or in the next 6 months to 2 years, this product is going to become something that is a need for people? So maybe before now, it has always been a nice to have, but you figure that in the next 6 months to 2 years, it's going to become a need for that target market. You also have to answer questions like, why now? Why are we building it now? Which I mentioned. You have to also produce, in terms of functionality, how you expect this product to work. What the pre-development part does is create a lot of clarity into why we're building this, how it's meant to work, again, so that anyone in the GTM team, anyone in top level management can understand what we're going for with this product, right? So I don't know how, of course, I've been on various teams, I have worn various hats, and I can tell you for a fact that, these processes are not, they are not flawless, right? Everybody has a way that they approach them. But for the sake of clarity and for the sake of wanting the ideal thing and wanting to function in a team where a product is actually giving the best shot at success, you want to start with creating two things. First, maybe as usual, a PRD. And secondly, let's call it a product brief. So the product brief answers all the questions about why you're building it, questions about how it's supposed to function, questions about the pain points that it's going to address. Under market research, this is a part of GTM strategy that not many product teams actually play a major part. Most of the time, it's primarily carried out by product marketing managers or product marketing managers and revenue operations people or salespeople, or both product managers and product marketing managers, right? But the idea of market research is to understand just how many people need what you're building, understand in both quantitative and qualitative terms, so both in numbers and all the other heuristics and measurement ways to measure if they can afford to, pay for the product, if it's a need for them, and just how many people, maybe from various market research methods like interviews or simply surveys that do not as not as biased as possible, and trying to find out ways that you can clear the assumptions you have. So sometimes when you step into a market research, you already have the assumption that, okay, 500,000 people have this problem. So let's say 500,000 Nigerians cannot access credit, or 500 million Nigerians cannot access credits, whatever the case is. When you step into a market research, you either want to form assumptions from some of the data that you have if it's not 100% clear, or you want to go in with your assumptions and hope that you come out on the other side with clarity on, what your target market, just the amount of target market, how much they're willing to pay. You have to look at the economic factor of that market as well. Can they afford the product that I'm building? Are these members of this market, and that kind of also moves into what we have next, which is ideal customer profile. So is that market one where they are early adopters? So when you have people who are early adopters to a product, they can move between products very quickly. They like to try new things. They are probably great for giving you early feedback, but outside of that, after a while, they move on to another product, maybe for various reasons like trying out various prices and things like that, right? So speaking to various people helps you decide exactly who you should be targeting this product to, and also helps you measure exactly what that market is and how to tailor your product to them. So you also look at competitive analysis. You look at people who are building the same thing that you're building. Look at the product. Also, if possible, use it as well. Speak to their customers as ethically as you possibly can. Understand what it is they like about the products, right? So the second, third, and fourth points are very linked. So when you're doing your market research, it can lead you to discover the exact tailored market that you should be building your product for. And in addition to that, also helps you understand, hey, what have you been using before now? If you're building something that addresses a concern, what have they been using to address that concern before your product came into the picture? You also want to know why they've been using the product. Is it because there's no other alternative? Are they using the product for a limited amount of time, and will they move on to something else later on? So you understand if the solution is a seasonal one. You also understand if them seeking out that solution is going to be a long-term thing. So it's great for you to spend time in this pre-development process trying to understand these things. Value proposition and messaging, these are the points you come to. So you've done your product brief, you've spoken to customers, you understand what they want, you understand potentially what they can pay for a product that delivers at that extent. You now know who you should be selling to, and you now kind of know where you are in comparison to your competitors. So maybe in terms of onboarding, they're better than you. Maybe in terms of pricing, you have a better price than they do. At that point, you now develop a value proposition. So a value proposition can sound like, oh, we're building a product to help you receive medication discreetly, at super speed for a low amount of money without middlemen, right? So when you're developing your value proposition, you have to think about addressing all the pain points, right? So if it was a long sentence, you take every pain point and turn it into a solution that your product is going to provide, right? So this helps you to also now develop your messaging. So messaging does not lie with the product team, but it's something that the product team has to collaborate in by making value proposition very clear. So the idea is that if you bring in a product marketing manager or anybody on your team, so if a content marketing person is the person responsible for messaging on your team, if you bring in that person when you're close to launching a product and you have not collaborated with them from the start, you're going to have some misalignment because they're only just learning about the product right now. It's like expecting somebody to meet your sibling or somebody you've known all your life for the first time and know them as well as you do. You have a mountain of context and they don't have that, right? So this is why, of course, we're going to get to that, but this is why collaborating is very important. So when the product team spends time building out value proposition, it makes messaging and developing that messaging so much easier. So what the marketing team can decide how launch is going to sound even before the product is ready, because now they know what the pain points are, they know what the solution the product is providing, they've read a product brief and understand the functionalities you're hoping to, produce with the product. So making maybe a landing page or a waitlist email or anything that brings customers into the door early on is so much easier for the product marketing manager that is working on this with you. So defining value proposition is key to making, providing that clarity that allows them to work at that scale. Another part of the pre-development stage that many product managers do not play in is pricing strategy. So most of the time, depending on the kind of team that you work at, you're basically told, so we're going to set it at this price, and you simply do. Sometimes some product managers ask why, sometimes they don't. But it's important for product managers to be involved in the pricing strategy because you need to understand, based on the competitive analysis I did, I'm able to contribute to this pricing strategy. If you made any pricing related observations in the course of that, you should definitely be able to, contribute to that point. So in many cases, in many companies, you find that it's the revenue operations people and maybe the business team or the finance team, even sometimes, that decide what the pricing for a product should be. What you have the product managers deciding most of the time is the kind of pricing, and it usually stops there. So are we doing freemium and why? Are we going to do tiered pricing and why? Are we going to do value-based pricing? Is it going to be free for a limited amount of time? Are we going to do usage-based pricing, right? So most times that's just where the product managers reach on pricing strategy stops, but you can actually engage more in that. We'll get to that also later. And then we have monitoring points and success metrics, right? So when you have decided all of these things, you know how much your product is going to cost, you know what the engineering team is supposed to be building, the design team also understands the charge they're supposed to take on this, your messaging is starting to take shape. Now you have to decide, how do I actually know that somebody is getting what they want out of this product? What are all the touch points in my product? Where are all the hits I expect my customers to make? And how can I, horizontally build that out and monitor it? So if you don't monitor something, obviously you're unable to tell maybe your head of products that something you've built is working. And also if you see customers not engaging, not adopting the product, or also dropping off, if you don't monitor it, excuse me, you'll be unable to tell just where this friction in your product is. So you have to decide the monitoring points from beginning, and you also have to decide what the success metrics are. In the beginning, because you obviously don't know how things are going to play out, you have at best very, very good assumptions, or assumptions that are good enough, backed by enough data from all of your research, right? But you really don't know what the future of the product is going to look like. You have to decide what success is at that point. So success can be, okay, from existing customers, I want to see at least 50% adoption. Um, if you see less than that, then you can start to ask questions like, okay, when I was doing product ideation, did I pick the wrong kind of existing customers to build this for? Did I mistake the solution that my product provides to be something that is a need when it is, merely a nice to have, right? So deciding on success metrics should actually happen at the beginning, and then you kind of build that out because you're also going to need it when you're testing the product, which is next. So design has done their magic, and you've looked through the UX, the user experience is great. The product marketing managers have also looked through the UX and think that it's great. So now you have to start doing product education for all the second stage stakeholders in your team. So this can be the support team, telling them, okay, this is how you use the product, and then you test it internally. So a small internal test is usually maybe the product team, the engineering team. If you have a super technical product, you probably have a developer experience team testing that out. And then you move on to wider internal testing. So you create a framework for other members of the company to test the product and give you feedback, right? So that helps to engage everyone in the product. That helps you to get more internal feedback. When it comes to external testing or beta, you have to look at, okay, in terms of the customers I have today, who are the customers who are likely to benefit the most from this product, right? So if you built it having in mind that 50% of your most active users are going to definitely use this product at some point, you can pick out some of them to be beta testers in an unbiased or biased way. So a biased way is, of course, them having information that, okay, I want you to test this, I want you to give me feedback. You personally reach out to them because of a lot of psychological things that that brings forward. You can call that bias testing. There are other forms of testing where you don't necessarily interface with anyone, but then your customers see maybe they've performed an action, and then after that action you prompt them to test a product. So basically they're not speaking to anyone from your team, they are just exercising their interest in the product. So they get to that point, they see what you've built, it's a beta, they get to test out some touch points. And if you had not set up monitoring points, you will, if you do an unbiased test where you're not personally interacting with whoever is testing the product, or whatever early customer is testing the product, you have no way of knowing what happened. So that's why setting up monitoring points is really important. And then we have a feedback loop. Of course, if you have, say, maybe if this is a B2B product that you're building out, external testing can also look like having the salespeople or account executives going to speak to businesses, maybe enterprise businesses, high ticket businesses that can benefit from the product, who are already active customers, and telling them to, hey, try this out. So then they come back with feedback for you after the business has tried it out, right? But from a B2C standpoint, if you're running a beta, you can get your feedback pretty quickly. And sometimes feedback is not necessarily what is said to you, is the action you see from the beta. So if somebody drops off halfway while testing your product, that could mean something. So those are all points that you can record. Now we get to the pre-launch stage where there's marketing alignment and sales. If you have that on your team, if you're building a B2B product alongside a B2C one, or you're just focused on B2B, you probably have a very active sales team. So this is where you align on the GTM motion. So pre-launch is usually when that GTM motion starts to take place. So how are we going to put it out there? Are we going to do a product partnership? So let's say you have a payment product, you want to launch it, but you think that bringing in a partner is going to boost the trust in the product is going to boost the reach in the amount of people that you can reach with the launch. So these are all points that you consider in a GTM motion. So this is the point where the marketing and sales team say, okay, I think we should take this route. Let's try a product partnership, or let's take out billboards. And then you have messaging refinement. So in the beginning, after the product team had worked on value proposition and all of that, the marketing team already came up with messaging. But as the product is being tested, as feedback is coming through, there are also changes, obviously, as the PM that you make to the product. So as you change the product and elevate that experience, even before it's launched, the messaging can also change to reflect parts of the product. Maybe in the feedback, somebody said that a part of the product that maybe you were not really paying a lot of attention to is the most important part to them, right? So that's also something that can be reflected in messaging. At the point where you're refining it, then you kind of let some other parts of the product shine and let people who are in that same bracket as the customer who gave you the feedback see that the product also does or performs the same function or gives them the same solution. Then you move on to marketing automation. So this is sort of life cycle stuff. This is the end stage of the GTM strategy. Mostly has the product marketing team doing most of it. But of course, the idea of the GTM strategy is collaboration. So all of the automation that happens also has to collaborate, has to have collaboration with the product team. So again, you follow the touch points. If a customer is onboarding on this product, at what points do I set up as triggers for them to know that they're performing the right actions? How can I create opportunities in that journey so that they can continue to, take the hits and get to maybe parting with money or whatever it is that we consider success, because we've decided what the success metrics are. So now we have to apply some automation that take people from onboarding on the product to the success points. And then you have the part of a GTM that everybody gets to see, which is the public announcement. So at this point, product is ready, everybody can see it and everybody cheers you, but they haven't seen, the mountain of all the work from everything on the left side here. So let's move on. That was a long one. So let's look at what GTM teams are. I've spoken a lot about product marketing teams, engineering teams, design teams. Depending on the nature of your team or the product you're building or the industry, GTM ops can look like having, of course, the product team is the central team, but you can have developer experience team. Like I said, if you're building something super technical, you can have, of course, you always have the engineering and design teams because we are considering a tech-enabled product here. And of course, you always have the marketing side of things to help you take the message of that product out. And plus or minus sales, like I said, depending on if you're doing a B2C thing or you're building a B2B product. So you can see some collaboration points here, a market research, competitive analysis, ideal customer profile development, and pricing strategy. You can see them on the left. The product team and the product marketing teams kind of collaborate on these points. Then when it comes to messaging and value proposition development, sometimes that lies entirely with the product marketing team. And sometimes the product and the product marketing teams collaborate on that. On the design side, sometimes you have the product marketing team being responsible for UX writing, micro copy and things like that. It's not a given on every team, but if you're a product marketing manager and you're wearing that hat as well, that's also great. Maybe it's too much work for you, but it's great because it exposes you to many parts of the product before you get to the launch part and just familiarizes you more with it. So these are some of the ways that these three teams, plus or minus whichever one you have in yours, can collaborate. So now let's speak directly about clarity and collaboration, right? You have breaking down you have to break the product down. So I want to know, how do I know who I'm supposed to collaborate with? Am I supposed to speak to only the design team, Sometimes as a PM, you just want to send your PRD to the design team and get the work done. And then when they're done, you tell the marketing team, oh, okay, we built this. When can you put a launch motion in progress so that we just get this thing out there? That's not the right way to go about it at all. You should collaborate from day one. You have to involve stakeholder teams pretty early. So you have, let's say, for example, you're building a fintech product, and it's something that does payment orchestration. So if you're not familiar with payment orchestration, it's helping a business orchestrate payments such that, okay, so you have multiple rails, you have multiple payment partners. The idea is if one fails, switch off that one, move to this dependency. So for the sake of this example, right, you're running your product runs payment orchestration. And as a PM, you decided that I'm just going to write the PRD for this payment orchestration. I'll send it to the design team and they'll start working with the engineering teams to get this out. When that is done, I'll send it to the marketing team to read about it, and then they'll tell me when they can launch it. You've left out a team here, and an example of the team you left out is the finance team, right? So sometimes we overlook low decision quota teams. So you think that because a team's decision is going to have very little impact on what you're building, you choose to leave them out. I know that product managers like to make sure that there are not too many cooks in the kitchen, because that can lead to a lot of disarray. And I completely agree with that. But on the other hand, when trying to be too strict with that, you can overlook some teams that are supposed to be part of the process from day one. So using the example of building a payment orchestration product, right? You can lose the finance team, which is supposed to handle things like money management, money movement from account to account for multiple consideration settlements, right? So if you, for example, build the product out and then you tell your finance team towards lunchtime, it's going to be either that maybe miraculously every single thing that you've stipulated in the functionality of the product works 100% for them, or they're going to send you back to the drawing board to work on something, right? So this is essentially how you make sure that from the beginning, you're considering every single team. Early collaboration, like I said here, means that the product and its functions are defined as and understood from first principle from day one. So last point here says that if you're writing a lot, you're in the right place. Most product managers complain that they're writing a lot, and that's something that is very clearly understood. If you, sorry for the noise, everyone. If you find yourself writing a lot, so at this point I've actually spoken about a lot of things that you have to write. You have to write a product development radar. So here you have to make sure that everybody who is a stakeholder in this product knows what is happening. Maybe if you're running 2 week sprints, they know what's happening every 2 weeks. If you're running weekly sprints, they know what's happening every week. They know what you've set out to happen. So they may not necessarily see every single Jira ticket that you've created, but they know the bulk of what you as a PM are expected to produce at the end of the week. So if you're fixing onboarding in week one, every stakeholder team working on the products with you knows that you're fixing onboarding on week one. And then you move on to the next stage. But if you're missing points, and they absolutely do not know where you are on things, then you're not collaborating. Sometimes you might find out about parts of the products that you have changed or moved around much later. So having a radar, something that can allow every stakeholder team keep a pulse on what you're working on, is very important. So again, just to run through everything, break the product down to define all of its parts, and then attach stakeholders to each part. If you're building a product that is going to require the input of your compliance team, you don't want to tell them when you've done everything. You've invested a lot of effort in, um, You've invested a lot of effort in market research, you've done competitive analysis, you've also written a PRD, you've worked on wireframes, and then you tell your compliance person, it's a little too late for that. Maybe not too late, but you've gone, pretty far, and you may have to take steps back. So that's some effort and time lost. So make sure to involve all teams, and whether they are low decision quota teams or high decision quota teams, you have to involve them from beginning and communicate very clearly with them. So when you collaborate early and clearly from first principle, it means that, like I mentioned when I showed us the table of the GTM processes, it simply means that everybody kind of is familiar with the product way before the day it launches, even before they get to hold the product in their hands, in their phones, or test it on their laptops. They already have some familiarity with the product. So nobody is surprised about anything, and they have the same aligned expectations on what you're supposed to produce. And finally, like I said, if you're writing a lot, you're in the right place. Product teams where there's no documentation, when nothing is written, when it can lead to, a lot of loss of context. So maybe you use Slack and you speak to someone in the DM, you speak to the head of the sales team in the DM. The head of the sales team speaks to their people, maybe in a meeting, and you've left out some important things, or they have used their own words to describe what you've said. What that means is that some context is going to be lost, something will be lost in translation. And when someone asks, oh, is there a document where I can see this? It means that there's a chance that there are 5 other people with that question as well. And you always have to remember that the fact that someone hears something from you about a product and how you're working on it, or the fact that somebody reads maybe a message on Slack, it does not mean that it has sunk in. So you have to have a place where everything is very clearly documented. So for a reader, for instance, if you can think about it like a change log, right? So on the 1st of August, we made this decision about the product and we built this out. On the 8th of August, this is what changed. Nothing fundamental has changed about the product. You're only going to see screen B before screen A now, right? So everybody is sort of aware about the journey that you're taking with this product. Again, nobody is surprised. And if for any reason somebody has some insights that may be helpful to you in the course of building this product, the fact that they're on the journey with you and the fact that you're offering very clear information means that they can, comment on that document with that very important information that can help you move from, maybe you've moved from 0 to 1, so they can move you from 1 to 2, right? Or stop you and remind you of something that you're forgetting, right? So it's very important to document things and collaborate with all the teams you plan to work with very clearly. So let's talk about principles, standards, and playbooks. So let's assume, hello, hand up.
Hello, it's almost time.
Oh,
So,
I'll try to wrap us up very quickly. Thank you. So let's assume that it's 3 p.m. on a regular Wednesday in the middle of the first half of the year, and a revenue operations strategist sends the following message to the product channel. Hi, people, check out this thread on Twitter. People are asking for their banking and wallet apps to allow them do bulk and automated transfers from savings accounts. It has like 500 retweets, and people are agreeing in the replies. We need to get on this ASAP. We have the rails. We can build this by next Wednesday and start testing. When can we have EPRD, please? I'm pretty sure that if you're a PM at a team that moves at a very fast pace, and maybe an early stage company as well, you've encountered a situation where you've been asked to build out of standard, or you've just been asked to build something very quickly, or been asked to build a product without understanding all of the earlier principles, the why now, how do you expect us to build that, right? So the idea of having standards and principles is for you to be able to say, okay, no, this is not how we do things, right? In the case of this example, it kind of clearly suggests that there's no standard on the team, that somebody can at 3 p.m. suggests that we build a product and it has to be something that a PRD is produced for almost instantly. So how do we handle that? How do we move from having those standards to having principles that actually guide us when we're building products? Um, and that involves, critically deciding how the team should build products. You should have a how we build products at XYZ. So you've been hired, let's say you are a founding product hire, you've been hired as the product lead, you're the first product person on the team. These are the things that you have to start out thinking about. How do we build products in this company? Your standards can, go as deep or as shallow as you want them to be, depending on the stage of the company. You can decide that every single feature you build is going to be backed by some type of compliance. A standard can be that you would never build a product if you do not have the certification to build that. So you build the product only after you have the certification. Your standard can be that if you're going to create a new product or a new feature that is going to affect over 10% of your existing user base, you do not do so in a short time. You spend your time actually doing very clear market research, right? So standards are important to the way that you build products and kind of lessens a lot of back and forth. So somebody wants you guys to build this product, you can refer them to the standards, right? So for this kind of product you're suggesting, this is the way that we do it, and we have to follow the standard, right? So guiding principles also work for new people who join your team. If someone joins your team as, say, a product owner today, they understand how the team functions, they understand all the principles that go into how you build products. They understand that they must follow the standard, and they must, make sure, because if you're not following the standards, you're going to have regrets, you're going to walk back a lot of things. If you're a very technical team, you can have technical debts that can prevent you from building another product in the future because you've racked up a lot of mistakes moving, up until that point. So, like I said, you can have shallow standards in the beginning. They're pretty broad, but they're standards nonetheless. And then as you learn more and build more products, you can refine your standards to reflect deeper things and how people should behave when they build a product. You can have a standard that's okay, we have a healthy limit on move fast and break things. There's just enough things that we can simply do because we want to, right? So you also have to create detailed playbooks for fundamental actions that are repeated over time. So what's our playbook for GTM? What's our playbook for GTM motion? What's our playbook for creating PRDs? What's our playbook for updating the radar? What's our playbook for collaborating with the design team? What's our playbook for when this happens? So you can have if this, then that type of playbooks, right? That allow you to follow feedback or observations with very clear action. Standards should be chosen and created collaboratively. So as a product manager, you don't want to create a standard that alienates any other team. I expect that, if you're creating a really good standard, you'll be working with an engineering leader, maybe a marketing leader as well. This way, everybody is in on that standard. Now also kind of becomes a company-wide standard that everybody leans on, right? So the highest performing companies that you can think about have standards. Companies like Stripe, companies like Netflix, some things just don't fly. So that's why it's important to have standards. You have, of course, fewer regrets when you build products, and you get to have more learnings than more mistakes. Um, I'm thinking that in next 4 minutes we will be closing out. So I'm just going to touch on this and the very next thing. We have just one slide left. So product sense is something that most people think that you can't teach another person. It's like design thinking, for instance. Most people think that you can't teach someone that, you just can't. It's like saying you can't teach someone to have good taste. But I'm one of the people who disagree. I think that the more people are exposed to good things, the more people are exposed to things that are well built, well thought out, they get to have a sense of what is right, right? So you have to create an environment that allows members of your team build product sense, expose them to thoughts even outside of the company. So develop taste, reach for external experiences. So you can urge members of your team to read things outside of their comfort zone, to listen to other product leaders in really successful companies, listen to how product leaders scaled something from -100 to 0 and then to 100. This kind of exposes them to what the best standards are out there, and just how much they can get something to work. Revenue sense is also important. Everybody on the team, both product managers, engineering people, have to move out of their scope a bit and understand how the company makes money. So you need to understand things like unit economics. You need to understand how some metrics affect the pricing strategy, like I mentioned before. So are we just making revenue, or are we profitable? Because those are two different things. And how does our acquisition cost mean that we are going to become profitable at some point? So the price we've set for this product is 10 naira. If 1,000 people pay 10 naira for this product, are we simply just going to make revenue from it, or are we going to at some point break even and now start making profit? So that also lends you the experience to start contributing to conversations like pricing strategy. Is this pricing sustainable in the next 2 years? If you build a product and in 3 months you're telling your customers that you want to increase the price, you're probably not going to get a very good response, right? So you need, as a PM, you need to be able to contribute to those conversations and understand how revenue works within the company, the unit economics that allow the pricing that you've set to make sense. So last thing is agency and top management buy-in. This is something that many product managers struggle with when they want to build something they're really passionate about. They want to build something. I've heard some product managers say about unsuccessful products, I was told to build it, I had no choice, I hate this product now, it's all a mess, I had the right idea and I wasn't listened to. These things happen. Sometimes you can start to see them happen, and sometimes they happen out of nowhere. The idea of being a high agency person, or someone who has a high agency mentality, is that you take a lot of ownership, right? You believe that your work is your name. Anything that you put out there has to be great. So if you're trying to get maybe management buying on a decision that you're trying to put forward, having a track record of excellence helps, right? And this isn't necessarily, okay, maybe from the company you're coming from. Even within the company, how have you, say, performed in the last 1 year with the products that you've built, the features that you've worked on, the teams you've been on? Have you learned from your mistakes? Have you lived with your mistakes? Have you owned them? Right? So high agency people are people who take ownership, they learn from their mistakes and make data-backed decisions, right? Also, in a case where maybe you're in a situation that you've now been foisted with a product that you didn't bring up the idea for, or did not think that it would work, you have to be ready to make trade-offs, right? So maybe someone in management is more convinced about this product working than you are. It's better to be hopeful than for you to be on the wrong side of history and say, oh, the product is never going to work, and then it works, right? So you should be ready to make trade-offs. Having low ego in a situation like this really helps, knowing that, it's simply a product and it's not about you. And you have to be ready to, support decisions that differ from your own, but bringing that same high agency, high organizational mentality to it, right? So the reality is, okay, it's not a product I like, it's not a product I think will work, but be that as it may, I am going to bring my skill at 100% to making the product work. I've made a trade-off. I'm not going to argue about it. I have presented data that shows that, the direction I want to take may be the better one. But I'm happy to follow your direction because I trust the hope that you have. I trust the information that you've given me. So I will give it everything I have to set up that product for success. Right. So those are some of the things that you can apply when maybe you're in a situation where you don't think that a product will work, or the direction you've been asked to take a product in is not one that you would originally go with. You also have to think about how you present information to top level management, right? So sometimes management is with you up to a certain point. And that can sometimes be because of maybe a communication style that you've chosen, or the way that you're simply communicating this product to them. Maybe there's a misalignment somewhere, which is why, clear communication is really important. One of the best ways to present anything at all to top management is a way that shows that you've done all of the thinking before you came to them. If you present top level management with something that requires them to now do the thinking again from scratch, it means that they're going to stall, maybe ask you to hold on while they do that thinking, or maybe question some decisions you've made. So, like I said, having a great track record of excellence helps. It means that whenever you present anything, there's already some good faith in the bank. That means that somebody looks at your work, as being very good, and then you should be ready to make trade-offs if your idea is not favored. If they want to move on with another decision, that's great. I am still going to bring, my best skills to what I have been asked to build anyway. And that way, you gain respect, you gain, people seeing you as an expert who actually takes time to understand things and, do some system thinking and build a product from first principle, so that in the future, maybe this decision hasn't worked out the way that you like. In the future, you have more people listening to, the same well-researched decisions that you decided to take. So thank you very much for listening. Very open to questions if, we have maybe 5 minutes to do that.
Hello. Thank you so much, Jennifer. It was really detailed and I learned a lot. I think we have a question. Do you have a sample template for all these playbooks?
Yes, I can share this with the community, of course, maybe tomorrow.
Awesome. Please share them to the resource channel on Slack along with this slide.
Okay, great. Does anyone have any other questions? Okay, I think Chinelo is first.
Okay, hi. So I'm not sure because I joined really late and I'm not sure like what, but the question I have is like around stakeholder management. I don't know if you touched base with that or I can just go ahead with the question.
You can go ahead either way.
Okay, so essentially like how do you manage your stakeholders, especially the one that's basically like breathing down your neck?
All right. So the best way to manage stakeholders is understanding that stakeholder issues are merely an expectation issue. So what do they expect, and where are you on that? So the conversation earlier had a part where we focused on bringing people in early enough into the process of what you're building. If people have sight on what you're building early enough, and you also have a system of sending updates before you're asked, or you've documented updates, maybe you're running weekly sprints as a PM, or you're running bi-weekly sprints, everybody can see what the team is going to be expected to produce in that sprint, right? So it's no longer a push and pull situation where somebody is coming to breathe down your neck. You've simply updated that, okay, this sprint we're working on onboarding. After that, we move on to something else. So if your stakeholder is onboarding focused, they get to see that that's what you're working on. Maybe you can report, okay, we're 70% done, but realigning with your stakeholder in a situation that, okay, we're now at that point where you're breathing down my neck. The idea is to have a conversation about what the expectations are in that moment. So where do you expect this to have been by now? If they tell you that, you should be able to, calmly, politely, and very transparently explain why you're not at that point yet. If the stakeholders' gripe is that, you told them you're building something in one way, and then you've taken another direction, of course, you have to I guess, take the fall for not telling them that you switched gears. So you now let them know the direction that you're taking, and then make a promise and stick to it to keep updating them very clearly in the future.
That was really helpful. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Yusuf, you're next.
Yeah, thank you so much for your presentation. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, I can.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, in the part where you were explaining about being involved in the pricing and being involved in how the company make money and the likes, uh, I don't know if my question is maybe somehow biased, but I just have to ask the questions. How do you manage a situation where company don't actually disclose? Maybe you meet the product at a particular point of development. The product is already out there in the market making money, doing the business, but you join the company to actually refine the product, add more features, look at the performance and likes. But company don't actually have this sense of making you understand all the ramifications where the product makes money. So I'm talking in line of that, like having what's it called? You are dealing with a B2B product. So you don't actually have the grasp of how the company make money. They believe that all those things can be handled with the marketing or the whatever team that you handle that. How do you manage that situation with the stakeholders to be able to let them understand that it is your right? You need to understand these things so that to give you that informed insight for decision making in your future development.
Thanks for your question, Yusuf. Yes, it's a common thing to see that maybe members of the product team and some other teams in general are not told maybe anything about how that pricing was achieved, how the decision on pricing was made, how the company makes money, and so on, right? The only way, the only realistic way is truly to ask, right? So most times you ask your line manager if they know. So let's say you're a PM and you have a product lead. You ask the product lead, so what do we know of decisions that allow us to set pricing? How do we come to the decision of placing a certain amount on a product? If they don't know the answer to that, you've planted a seed, I hope, depending on the kind of maybe line manager that you have. If they don't know, you can ask, okay, is there someone else I can speak to? So if you have a business team that is involved in the products, maybe a business analyst, you can ask the business analyst, hey, do you know what the unique economics are on our products? Do you know how much we spend acquiring customers? I'm asking this for so and so reasons. I'm asking this because I want to be more involved. I'm asking this because I want to understand how I can help the company scale the product more so that we can make more money. I'm asking this because, of course, I want to better my knowledge of how pricing strategy works. Transparency is something that differs from company to company, to be honest, but I don't really see a good reason for anyone at a company to, very tightly hide that information from you. I think that the first step is finding who has that information. So if nobody has the information in totality, then another way to go about it is to get bits of the information and then form a picture on your own. You can ask the leader of the marketing team how much we spend acquiring customers. So in a predominantly B2C company, you know that most of the marketing budget lies with just the marketing team, right? So you can ask the leader of the marketing team, hey, how much do we spend acquiring customers? What's the lifetime value of each customer that we acquire? So you now have maybe one third of the equation. So you now know what the CAC and the LTV is. If the business analyst was able to answer, maybe the business analyst said, okay, so before we decide pricing, we consider infrastructure costs. So maybe your company is spending a lot of money on Amazon or on cloud services. So now you know that per user, we are spending maybe $0.001. We're spending 30 cents per user to keep this product up. So now you have that half of the picture. And then you speak to maybe somebody else and they tell you, maybe somebody in partnerships, and they tell you that, oh, say for instance, it's a fintech product. So we partnered with XYZ Bank, and on every transfer fee or every fee, they take 30% and we take 70. So this is the amount. Let's say the transfer fee is 25 naira and they take 30% of that. So now you have, bits of the picture. If nobody has the whole picture, you can sort of get it from various people, very clearly explaining why you want the information, and then put the picture together yourself. So you now know what CAC, acquisition costs, and lifetime value is from the marketing person. You now know what we pay on, what the company pays on partnerships with its partners, if that is the kind of pricing that you have. If you have a subscription pricing, then how you now factor in maybe what the business analyst told you, we pay so and so on infrastructure and things like that. So it's either you get the information in whole by asking as politely and clearly as you can, or you ask various people who are in charge of bits of that information and then create a picture for yourself. Yeah.
Thank you so much. That's very helpful. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. We have one more question, but we're out of time, so she'll be asking it on Slack. And for our other guests, we want to invite you for our following sessions. We host sessions like these. On Tuesdays, we have interview prep and group mentorship sessions. On Saturday, we have check-in call. So please clear your calendars and try to join. For webinars, we have webinars every second and fourth Thursdays of the month. You could always find details across our social media platforms. Thanks once again for joining, and have a lovely evening.
Thanks for having me, everyone. Bye.